G'day guys, Solid here. Hope you're all doing well, and Yamaha have officially announced the 2022 Tenere 700 World Raid. It's no longer just a theory and we don't have to pore over patent images anymore. We've got a decent amount of specs, although I will point out we don't have all the specifications yet, but we do have a decent amount and some of the upgrades really do look quite good. So let's just get straight into it here. The biggest one and the most obvious one, like I pointed out in previous videos, is the bigger fuel tanks. We now know exactly how big they are. It will supply you with 23 liters, or if you're in America, it's 6.1 gallons. So it's a fairly decent big tank. So they're saying roughly 500 kilometers for us in the metric system and about 310 miles if you're stuck in the imperial systems. Pretty decent amount of range, and that was a critique a fair amount of Tenere riders actually had. So it's really good to see. Yamaha are claiming that because of the revised tanks, they actually sit lower on the bike and keep the fuel lower as well. So they're saying it'll be a better center of gravity, and that should lend itself to some handling performance. Time will tell though. Once we get a leg over this bike, will really show whether that is true or not. The other great thing is the upgraded suspension. A lot of people have asked for this. I've had a lot of owners telling me that the suspension's a little squishy when the going gets really hard with those big hits. The forks now give you 9.1 inches of wheel travel. That's 230 millimeters. So that's a 20 millimeter increase, or a 0.8 inch increase over the base model. So more clearance, more travel is always a good thing. So that is great to see. So the suspension also has a longer stroke. It's up to 250 millimeters now, or 9.8 inches, up from 240 millimeters or 9.4 inches. The new forks are equipped with a spring preload adjuster in addition to the rebound and compression dampening adjusters and air bleeding screw that are already on the Tenere 700. Yamaha are claiming that these updates do address the ability of the bike to put up with those really hard hits off-road. Time will tell whether that is the case or not. The rear suspension is also upgraded. It has a piggyback type shock absorber with a longer stroke. The rear suspension's dampening characteristics, spring rate and linkage ratios have all been optimized according to Yamaha. Again, we will see once we get our hands on the bike. We do have 20 millimeters or 0.8 inches more wheel travel on the back, and it's fully adjustable for spring preload as well as compression and rebound dampening. As I also pointed out, which is kind of suspension and handling, is the Öhlins steering dampener that is on the bike. I think this is a fantastic addition. I really wish most bikes came with a steering dampener if you're doing off-road. I'm sure we've all been there. We've been riding along, enjoying ourselves, and then we hit the deep sand. So it's great to just be able to twist it up, dampen that steering reaction so you don't end up going over the handlebars. I think this is probably one of the biggest additions that I'm looking forward to the most. Yamaha also saying they've got an updated airbox, so they're saying it's facing away from the rear wheel, which apparently that it won't pick up as much dust. Arguably it could help, but how would you really measure that until you've got the bike and you compare air cleaner to air cleaner? Time will tell, but this does show that Yamaha aren't just giving lip service to upgrades on this bike. They've clearly gone over the bike and seen where they can tweak little pieces here and there. We've got a new flatter seat, which they say mimics more of a dual sport and enduro setup, allows you to shift and move your body around to get into a better position. It is 890 millimeters, so that's up about 15 millimeters or 0.6 inches over the standard model. Now, if you're a shorter person, the standard model was already too tall, but it is interesting that this is even taller again, and they haven't announced whether there is a lower seat model yet. Yamaha have not given us a dry weight or a wet weight, so we don't know how heavy this model is over the existing base models. We do have to wait for that information, and I think that's a little dubious here that Yamaha haven't stated the dry or the wet weight straight up. That's got me questioning, is it significantly heavier over the base model? The other addition here is a 5-inch TFT screen. I think this looks pretty poor. Now, I do like TFT screens. I'm a younger bloke. I do like technology and I like things looking clean and smooth. But that bezel, I swear, is straight out of the noughties. That is just so old school looking. It looks like one of those cheap $200 tablets. It really looks outdated and sad. It either needs no bezel or go for the more rugged look. This just looks like they've tried to save as much money as possible. The Tenere sticks with minimal electronics. There's still no traction control. There is still no cruise control, but now you get 3 modes of ABS. So that's ABS on both wheels. Then the second mode is ABS off on the rear. And then the third mode is no ABS at all. So people who like low tech on their adventure bikes, Tenere 700 will still have you covered. The rest of the stuff really is just typical update stuff. We've got a better windscreen, they revised radiator grills, they've got bigger foot pegs on this bike, and some other little minor detail changes. So price has not been released on this bike yet for Australia or America as far as I can tell, but it does look like the UK have a price and it's set at £11,600. If we do a direct calculation into AUD, that is a $20,000+ motorcycle. I'm really concerned that this bike is going to be a $20,000, possibly $21,000+ motorcycle. And in that case, I don't really see the value here. One of the biggest appeals of the Tenere 700 when it first came out was out the door, it was basically $16,000. And you've got a bike that, sure, it isn't quite up to spec of the KTM 790 at the time, now the 890, but it sure did come close and you saved basically $5,000 or $6,000. You could get a second-hand Tenere 700, put a big safari tank on it, do the suspension yourself and put really high-end stuff on, put your own steering dampener on, and you still probably haven't even cracked $20,000. If Yamaha can bring that down to say $19,990, I think that's a little easier to swallow. It's a bit of a mental thing too. I'm just basing that off the UK price because, like I said, Australia and America haven't announced their pricing, so we don't know what Yamaha are going to do. What I think overall of the updates is pretty fantastic. We've addressed the suspension issue, we've addressed the fuel tank issue for some people. I love the steering dampener. What I'm most disappointed about though that isn't put onto the bike is upgraded brakes. The Tenere did have adequate brakes, but they certainly weren't impressive. I think an upgrade in the brake department would have been very welcome considering that extra fuel you'll be carrying. Is it the end of the world? Not at all. The brakes were certainly adequate on the base model. I would really like to see Yamaha offer that as an upgrade on the accessories. I do still think there'll be a market for this bike, that people that want the longer distance tank straight out of the box, as well as the better suspension and the steering dampener without faffing about on the aftermarket, and do have the money for a good middleweight, but they want that perceived reliability aura around the Japanese bikes that still persists over the European bikes. I'm not saying that that is actually the reality, but some people still see it that way, so they feel far more comfortable buying a Japanese bike over a European bike. For me personally, I'd probably get a second-hand existing Tenere, put the big safari tank on it, take it to a suspension specialist and upgrade the suspension and put my own steering dampener on and call it job done. But if you got the cash and you want something shiny new and really ritzy and nice, then it looks like Yamaha now have you covered. So I'd love to know your thoughts, guys. I know that was a bit of a ramble. Please comment down below. Are you looking forward to these updates? Are you looking forward to all the secondhand Teneres as people upgrade to this bike and you're going to snap yourself up a bargain and upgrade it yourself? And don't forget to stay shiny side up, and I'll see you in the next one, guys. Catch you later.